Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had a nautilus quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in the classroom was so dry it tasted like dust. For most people, the humidity of a Japanese summer was a suffocating blanket, a reason to complain about sweat stains and frizzing hair. For Izuku Midoriya, the lack of it was a slow, creeping itch that started beneath his shoulder blades and worked its way down his spine. It was the feeling of clay baking in a kiln, tightening until it threatened to crack. He reached for the water bottle on his desk, his third of the morning, and drained it in one long, desperate pull. The plastic crinkled loudly in the silence of the room, drawing a few side eyes from the students in the front row. Izuku didn't care. As the cool liquid hit his stomach, his internal biology shifted. The latent organs tucked against his ribs expanded, absorbing the hydration, and the terrible, tight itch across his back subsided into a dull, manageable ache. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your future, the teacher announced, slapping a stack of papers onto his podium. I could pass out these career aptitude forms, but he snatched them up and threw them into the air with a theatrical flair. Why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero course. The room exploded. Quirks fired off in a chaotic display of teenage bravado. Fingers elongated, eyes glowed, and minor telekinesis sent pencils spinning. It was a riot of individuality, a celebration of the genetic lottery. Izuku sat still, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. He kept his head down, the ridges of his spine pressing uncomfortably against the hard plastic of the chair. He wore his Gakuin uniform slightly oversized, the thick fabric bunching around his shoulders to hide the distinct, unnatural hump of his upper back. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher droned, waving a hand to settle them down. But you know the rules. No power usage in school. Hey, teach! The voice was like a rough serrated blade cutting through the noise. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet propped up on his desk, a grin splitting his face that was equal parts arrogance and genuine menace. Don't lump me in with these extras, Bakugo sneered. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm the real deal. I'm going for the top. Ah, Bakugo, the teacher noted, adjusting his glasses. You're aiming for UA high, aren't you? The class murmured in shock. UA was the gold standard, the impossible peak. But Bakugo just laughed, jumping onto his desk to monologue about his inevitable supremacy. And the teacher interrupted, glancing at his clipboard with a disinterested hum. It looks like Midoriya is applying for UA as well. The silence that followed was heavy, sudden, and absolute. Then, the laughter came. It wasn't the boisterous cheering of before. It was sharp, mocking, and cruel. Midoriya? No way. With that quirk? He's gonna dry out before the entrance exam starts. Good luck being a hero when you need a sprinkler system just to stay conscious. Izuku shrank into himself, his face burning. He knew this reaction. He'd lived with it since he was 4 years old. In a world of flashy emitters and powerful transformation types, having a mutation that made you look like a prehistoric sea creature was underwhelming. Worse, it was viewed as gross. Slam! An explosion rocked Izuku's desk, sending him tumbling backward out of his chair. He hit the floor hard, instinctively tucking his chin. As he scrambled back, he saw Bakugo looming over him, smoke curling from his palms. Forget the extras, Deku, Bakugo growled, his red eyes narrowing. You're worse than them. You're a bottom feeder. You really think they're gonna let a slimy little mollusk like you into the hallowed halls of UA? I am not trying to compete with you, Kaken. Izuku stammered, scooting back until his back hit the chalkboard. It's been my dream. Since I was little. And there's no rule against it. I can try. Try? Bakugo stepped forward, his hand popping with miniature detonations. What can you even do on land, huh? You're useless outside of a swimming pool. You're just a glorified squid meant to be stepped on. Izuku flinched, his body reacting to the threat before his mind did. Squelch. With a wet, tearing sound, the back of his uniform ripped open. Four thick, fleshy appendages burst from the spiral markings on his back. They were a mottled green and cream color, slick with a natural mucus coating, muscular and tapered like the tentacles of a giant cephalopod. They writhed in the air, instinctively positioning themselves between Izuku and the explosion, forming a fleshy shield. The class recoiled. Ugh, gross! A girl in the front row shrieked. Put those things away, Midoriya. It smells like a fish market in here now. Bakugo looked at the tentacles with pure disgust. Look at that. You panic and you turn into calamari. You think those rubbery twigs can stop me? Put them away, Midoriya, the teacher said, sounding more bored than concerned about the bullying. And Bakugo, sit down. Class isn't over. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. He focused on the sensation of the muscles in his back, willing the appendages to retract. It was painful, like forcing a dislocated shoulder back into the socket. The tentacles curled inward, shrinking and folding into the subdermal cavities along his spine and shoulder blades. The skin knitted over them, leaving only the raised, spiral scarring that looked like the shell of a fossilized nautilus. He stood up, clutching his torn shirt, and sat back down. He didn't look up for the rest of the day. The sun was a physical weight on his shoulders as he walked out of school. Izuku checked his phone, 32 degrees Celsius. Hazardous for him. He pulled a hydration pack from his bag, a specialized piece of gear his mother had bought him, and took a long sip from the tube. He needed to get to the station quickly. Every minute in the direct sun sapped his energy, making his limbs feel like lead. Hey! Use your ears, bottom feeder. Izuku froze. He was passing the koi pond near the school entrance. Bakugo and his lackeys were waiting. Keikaken, Izuku said, clutching his notebook to his chest. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. It was his lifeline, his way of understanding the world that rejected him. Bakugo snatched the notebook before Izuku could react. We're not done talking. Please give it back. Bakugo looked at the cover. Hero Analysis? You really are delusional. He clamped his hands around the book. Boom! Izuku watched in horror as smoke poured from between Bakugo's palms. The blonde tossed the charred, smoking notebook over his shoulder. It landed with a pathetic plop right in the center of the koi pond. Here's some advice, Bakugo said, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he placed a smoking hand on Izuku's shoulder. The heat was intense, drying out the skin on Izuku's shoulder instantly, making it crack. If you want to be a hero so bad, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you're born with a fire quirk in the next life. Or maybe a shark quirk. At least then you'd have teeth. Bakugo walked away, laughing with his friends. Izuku stood there, trembling. He wanted to shout. He wanted to use the crushing grip hidden in his back to snap Bakugo's wrist. But he didn't. He couldn't. Heroes didn't hurt people out of anger. Izuku walked to the edge of the pond. The fish were nibbling at the burnt paper. Stupid fish, he muttered, his voice cracking. That's not food. He didn't reach for it with his hand. Instead, he let out a breath. 2 tentacles snaked out from under his shirt, sliding silently into the water. This was where he belonged. In the water, the heavy, dragging weight of his mutation vanished. His tentacles, which felt like heavy chains on land, became weightless ribbons of pure muscle. He could feel the vibrations of the fish swimming, the temperature variance in the water layers, the slight current from the filter. With delicate precision, one tentacle curled around the notebook, lifting it gently from the surface without tearing the soggy paper. He retracted the limb, shaking the water off before handing the book to his human hands. I'm not a bottom feeder, he whispered to the reflection in the water. The boy looking back had wide, green eyes and markings on his neck that looked like gills but were actually air intake valves. I'm going to be a hero. Somehow, to avoid Bakugo, Izuku took the long way home. It led through a series of underpasses, shaded from the sun. The drop in temperature was a relief. He unbuttoned his gakuren, letting the air hit the vents on his ribs. His physiology was a hybrid, part human, part ancient cephalopod. He had lungs, but he also had a secondary internal system that pressurized air and water for propulsion. On land, it just meant he had incredible lung capacity and a need to vent excess pressure occasionally. He was muttering to himself, trying to salvage the notes in his head. Giantification exploits. Empty lady needs clearance. Kamui Woods has a distinct weakness to thermal fluctuation. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The voice came from the sewer grate. Before Izuku could turn, the sludge exploded outward. It was a wall of liquid rot, smelling of sewage and decay. Izuku turned to run, but on land, he was slow. His dense bone structure and the weight of his retracted tentacles made him sluggish. The slime slammed into him. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose, his ears. Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need your body to hide in. Izuku clawed at the fluid, but his fingers slipped through. He couldn't breathe. Panic flared, hot and white. I'm dying. I'm going to die here, drowned in sludge. No! Think. His human instincts were failing. He needed to stop thinking like a human. I can't breathe air. But I don't need to breathe air right now. Izuku clamped his throat shut. He activated the siphon vents on his ribs. Usually, he used them to expel water for speed, but they could also intake. He tried to suck in air to blast the villain off, but the sludge was covering his torso too. The villain laughed. Nice try. I'm fluid. You can't grab me. Izuku's vision was spotting. He felt the familiar sensation of his tentacles trying to burst free, triggering a defense mechanism. If I can't breathe, I have to make space. With a wet tear, all 10 tentacles erupted from his back. In the confined space of the sludge body, they acted like expanding roots. They lashed out, churning the villain's liquid body from the inside. Whoa! What is this? Get off! The villain shouted, his form losing cohesion as 10 muscular limbs thrashed inside him. Izuku's tentacles found purchase on the concrete walls of the tunnel. Grip. Pull. He tried to tear himself out of the villain's grasp using the leverage of the tunnel walls. He was strong. His quirk gave him hydraulic-like strength in his extra limbs, but the sludge was too elastic. You slippery little pest! The villain tightened his hold. Just as Izuku's consciousness began to fade, a manhole cover clattered to the ground. Have no fear! Why? A massive figure silhouetted against the light. Because I am here. A blast of wind pressure hit the tunnel. The sludge villain screamed as he was scattered by the sheer force of the punch. Izuku was thrown back, his tentacles instinctively forming a cage around his head to protect him from the impact. He hit the ground and rolled, coughing up slime. When he looked up, blinking through the tears, he saw him. All Might. The number 1 hero was gathering the scattered bits of the villain into plastic soda bottles. He moved with a speed that defied physics. All Might? Izuku wheezed. His tentacles were still out, swaying sluggishly in the air, dripping with slime. He hurriedly retracted them, shame flushing his face. He must look like a monster. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. All Might boomed, flashing a smile that blinded Izuku more than the sun. I'm chasing this villain down the sewer system. Sticky fellow, isn't he? Izuku scrambled for his notebook. Please! Sign my— Wait, you already did. He stared at the signature that sprawled across 2 pages. He bowed repeatedly. Thank you? Thank you? This is a family heirloom. Okay. All Might gave a thumbs up. Well, I must be off. Evil doesn't sleep, and neither does the symbol of peace. He crouched, ready to leap. Wait! Izuku shouted. He hadn't asked? He needed to ask. All Might, I need to know. But All Might was already launching himself into the sky. Without thinking, Izuku's body reacted. 2 tentacles shot out, wrapping tightly around All Might's leg just as he took off. The G-force was immense. Izuku's cheeks flapped in the wind. Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive. All Might shouted, trying to shake his leg. If I let go, I'll die. Izuku screamed, the wind stealing his words. Oh. Good point. They landed on a rooftop. Izuku collapsed, gasping for air. The high-altitude air was dry and thin. He felt his skin tightening immediately. He needed water soon. That was reckless, All Might chided. Bang on the door, someone will let you in. I have to go. Wait. Izuku struggled to his feet. He ignored the stinging in his eyes. All Might, is it possible? Steam began to rise from All Might's body. Is it possible to be a hero, if your quirk is gross? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. If you're useless on land? If everyone calls you a bottom feeder? Can I still be like you? Can I save people with a power like this? He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the answer. A soft poof sound reached his ears. Kid, look! Izuku opened his eyes. All Might was gone. In his place stood a skeletal man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Ah! Imposter! Izuku shrieked. After a panicked explanation involving a surgery and a missing stomach, the skeletal All Might sat down on the ventilation unit. The reality of the symbol of peace was jarring, but strangely, it made Izuku listen more intently. To answer your question, All Might said, his voice low and serious. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. He saw the spiral markings, the slightly odd shape of the boy's torso, the gills on his neck. Pro heroes have to risk their lives every day, All Might said. Some quirks are naturally suited for combat. Some for rescue. Yours, it looks like a mutation type. Aquatic-based? Nautilus, Izuku whispered. I have tentacles, a pressure system, and shell hardening. But I dry out fast. I'm slow on land. I'm not strong unless I'm grappling, All Might sighed. I won't lie to you, kid. The job is dangerous. Police officers get mocked, but they're heroes too. Or the Coast Guard. With a quirk like yours, you'd be unrivaled in maritime rescue. But I want to be a hero, Izuku insisted. Like you? All Might looked at the sky. It's not bad to have a dream. But you have to be realistic. A hero who collapses from dehydration in a city fight is a liability. You need to look at what you can do, not just what you want to do. He stood up, walking toward the door. Be a savior, kid. But maybe find a way to do it that fits your fins. The door clicked shut. Izuku stood alone on the roof. The wind dried the tears on his face before they could even roll down his cheeks. Realistic. That was the word. It was the polite way of saying no. Bakugo was right. He was a fish trying to climb a tree. Izuku didn't know how long he stood there. Eventually, the sound of explosions snapped him out of his trance. He looked toward the shopping district. Smoke was rising. A thick, black column of it. A villain attack? His feet moved before his brain did. Habit. He was a hero fanboy, after all. Even if he couldn't be one, he could watch. He could take notes. When he arrived at the scene, the heat was unbearable. Fires were burning in the street. The crowd was pushed back by police tape. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? Someone shouted. Izuku pushed to the front. He saw Death Arms lifting a piece of rubble, but staying back. He saw Kamui Woods hesitating, afraid of the fire. He saw Empty Lady blocked by the narrow street. And then, he saw the villain, the sludge villain. I did this, Izuku thought, his blood turning to ice. All Might drop the bottle because I grabbed his leg. This is my fault. And then he saw the victim. Buried deep in the sludge, struggling against the suffocating tide, was a face he knew. Katsuki Bakugo. The boy who bullied him. The boy who told him to dive off a roof. But right now, Bakugo wasn't a bully. He was a drowning victim. His eyes, usually so fierce, were wide with pure, primal terror. He was trying to breathe, but the sludge was forcing its way down his throat. He's dying. The heroes were waiting for someone with the right quirk. They were being realistic. Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking. His skin was dry, itching, screaming for water. The fire made it worse. If he went in there, he would bake. My legs. Izuku didn't think about the heat. He didn't think about his notebook. He didn't think about being a bottom feeder. With a roar that surprised even himself, Izuku sprinted under the police tape. Hey! Stop, kid! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He was running toward the sludge, but he was slow. The villain saw him coming. You again? The sludge villain raised a massive liquid tentacle to smash him. Izuku couldn't dodge. Not with his legs. Adapt. Izuku took a massive breath, expanding his ribcage until it hurt. He felt the pressure build in his secondary organs. He didn't have water to expel, but he had air. He twisted his torso, aiming the vents on his left side backward. Nautilus jet, air siphon, thwum. A concentrated blast of high-pressure air erupted from his flank. It acted like a thruster, launching his body sideways with violent speed. He barely missed the villain's attack. He spun in midair, activating the vents on his other side to correct his trajectory. It was clumsy, uncontrolled flight, like a balloon let loose, but it propelled him straight at the villain's main mass. "Get lost!" the villain snarled. Izuku didn't punch. He didn't kick. Squelch. 10 tentacles erupted from his back, fully extended to their maximum length of 3 meters. They bypassed the sludge's outer defense, diving into the liquid like spears. "Kaken!" Izuku screamed. His tentacles weren't trying to hit the villain, they were looking for purchase. 2 wrapped around Bakugo's chest. 4 slammed into the pavement to anchor Izuku against the pullback. The remaining 4 lashed out, the tips hardening into calcified hooks, shell point, to rake at the villain's eyes. Arg! The villain recoiled as the hardened tips slashed his sensory organs. Izuku planted his feet and pulled. The muscles in his back screamed. The heat of the fire was drying his tentacles rapidly, making the skin crack and bleed, but he didn't let go. "Let him go!" Izuku yelled. He inhaled again, this time aiming his vents forward, directly into the sludge surrounding Bakugo. Siphon blast. He expelled all the air in his system at point-blank range. The blast of air acted like a bubble forcing its way into a pipe. It disrupted the villain's cohesion, blowing the sludge away from Bakugo's face. Bakugo gasped, sucking in greedy gulps of air. He looked up, his eyes focusing on Izuku. "Deku? I couldn't just watch you die!" Izuku cried, tears streaming down his face, sizzling on his hot cheeks. "I'm gonna crush you both!" The villain recovered, surging forward to swallow them whole. Izuku braced himself. He wrapped all 10 tentacles around Bakugo, forming a protective cocoon. He hardened his back, the spiral markings glowing faintly as calcification set in. Spiral shell defense. He closed his eyes, waiting for the end. Detroit. Smash! The pressure wave was like a hurricane. The wind tore the fires out. The sludge was vaporized into mist. Rain began to fall from the sky, generated by the sheer updraft of the punch. As the cool rain hit Izuku's skin, his tentacles relaxed, uncurling from around Bakugo. He slumped to the ground, panting, the water soothing his cracked skin. All Might stood there, steam rising from his body, his fist raised. The aftermath was a blur. The heroes scolded Izuku for 10 minutes straight. "You have a mutation quirk. You're not fireproof. You could have gotten in the way." Death Arms yelled, pointing a finger at Izuku's chest. "That was suicide." Izuku just nodded, accepting it. He knew it was true. Meanwhile, the media and other heroes were swarming Bakugo. "That quirk is amazing. You held out for so long. You're a natural hero, kid." Izuku stood up, wincing as his sore muscles protested. He retracted his tentacles, hiding the bleeding cracks in his skin under his ruined uniform. He turned to walk home. He was tired. He was dehydrated. But for 1 second, he had moved. "Deku!" Izuku turned around. Bakugo was running after him, panting. His uniform was messed up, but he looked unharmed. "I didn't ask for your help," Bakugo yelled, his voice raw. "I didn't need you. You didn't save me. I was fine. Don't look down on me, you damn bottom feeder." He spun around and stomped off. Izuku blinked. That was expected. But Bakugo hadn't blasted him. He hadn't hit him. "I am here." All Might slid out from an alleyway, striking a pose before instantly deflating into his skeletal form, coughing up blood. "All Might?" Izuku jumped. "Wait, you should be at the hospital. Or dodging reporters." "I shook them off," All Might said, wiping his mouth. "I had to find you." "Me?" Izuku looked down. "I'm sorry. I didn't listen to you. I acted without thinking. I probably made it harder for you." "No," All Might said firmly. The hero took a step forward. The setting sun cast long shadows down the street. "On that roof, I told you to be realistic," All Might said. "I judged you based on what I saw, a boy with a quirk suited for the sea, trying to live on land. I looked at the mechanics, not the spirit." Izuku looked up, his heart hammering against his ribs. At the scene, All Might continued, clenching his fist over his heart. None of the pros moved. They made excuses. They waited for the perfect match. But you, a timid, quirk-bullied boy, you moved. All Might looked Izuku in the eye. Top heroes have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's knees felt weak. He clutched his chest, tears welling up again. That happened to you today, didn't it? Yes, Izuku choked out. You used your power not to destroy, but to protect. You adapted. You found a way to breathe in a situation where everyone else was choking. All Might smiled. It wasn't the practiced grin of the symbol of peace. It was a small, genuine smile. I was wrong, Izuku Midoriya. You don't need to be a police officer. You don't need to stay in the water. Izuku fell to his knees, pressing his forehead against the pavement, sobbing. The spiral markings on his back heaved with every breath. You can be a hero. The words washed over him, more refreshing than any water. All Might waited for the boy to compose himself. He didn't offer a quirk. He didn't offer a secret power. He watched the boy with the nautilus shell on his back stand up, wipe his eyes, and look at the future with a fire that hadn't been there before. Now, All Might said, checking his watch. You should probably get some water. You're looking a bit crusty. Izuku laughed, a wet, teary sound. Yeah. I really am. The ocean did not fight the shore, it reshaped it. It was a lesson in persistence, a rhythmic, endless application of pressure that turned jagged rocks into smooth stones and cliffs into sand. Izuku Midoriya stood at the edge of the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, staring at the horizon where the gray water met the gray sky. Or, he would have been staring at the horizon if his view weren't blocked by a mountain of garbage that smelled of rust, rotting rubber, and abandoned dreams. It had been 3 days since the sludge villain incident. 3 days since All Might had looked him in the eye and told him that he could be a hero. 3 days since Izuku had realized that could and would were separated by a chasm of physical inadequacy. He adjusted the straps of his backpack. It was heavy, weighed down not by books, but by water bottles. 6 2-liter bottles, to be exact. 12 kilograms of hydration. To anyone else, it was excessive. To Izuku, it was fuel. Okay, he muttered to himself, pulling a fresh notebook from his pocket. The cover read, The Pelagic Training Plan, Phase 1. The entrance exam is in 10 months. I have 0 combat experience. My stamina on land is 40% lower than the average human male due to the energy cost of carrying my extra limbs. My skin cracks at humidity levels lower than 50%. He looked up at the trash heap, a towering refrigerator balanced precariously on a crushed sedan. I don't have a mentor, he whispered, the wind snatching his words. All Might said I could be a hero, but he didn't say he'd train me. He's busy saving the world. I have to save myself first. This was his logic. If he couldn't clear this beach, a literal sea of refuse, he had no business stepping into the ocean of pro-heroism. Izuku stepped onto the sand. His shoes sank slightly. He took a deep breath, feeling the dry air rasp against his throat, and reached for the first tire. Month 1, the benthic crawl. The first week was less about training and more about humiliation. Izuku's quirk, Nautilus, was a mutation of contradiction. It granted him 10 powerful, muscular tentacles housed in the subdermal cavities of his back, and a pressurized respiratory system. Underwater, he was a torpedo, a creature of grace and terrifying power. On land, he was a clumsy boy with an extra 80 pounds of dead weight strapped to his spine. Lift with your legs, not your back, he grunted, trying to heave a rusted washing machine onto a designated pile near the road. He wasn't using his tentacles. He was trying to build his human core strength. If he relied solely on his quirk, his human limbs would atrophy, leaving him a glass cannon, powerful offensive limbs attached to a fragile twig of a body. He strained, his biceps trembling. The washing machine barely moved. The sun beat down on the back of his neck. He felt the familiar, terrifying itch of his skin beginning to desiccate. Need water. He dropped the machine and scrambled for his bag, chugging a bottle in seconds. He wiped his mouth, panting. This isn't working, he admitted to the seagulls. I'm training like a human. I'm not human. Not entirely. He opened his notebook. He sketched a diagram of his own body. My center of gravity is different. My back is heavier. When I run, I lean forward to compensate. When I lift, I risk toppling backward. He looked at the washing machine. Okay. Integration. He closed his eyes. He focused on the sensation between his shoulder blades. It felt like uncoiling a rope. Squelch. 2 tentacles emerged from the upper ports of his back. They were thick, the color of seafoam and wet sand, glistening with a protective mucus coating. They hung in the air, tasting the wind with their sensory suckers. Izuku wrapped his human hands around the base of the washing machine. Then, he maneuvered the 2 tentacles over his shoulders, gripping the top of the machine. 3, 2, 1, heave, he lifted. The difference was immediate. The tentacles acted as a crane, taking the weight off his lower back and distributing it through his spine and hips. The machine rose into the air, but then, the weight shifted. The water inside the machine sloshed. Izuku overcorrected. His tentacles twitched, one pulling harder than the other. He spun out of control, the washing machine flying sideways and crashing into a pile of tires, while Izuku face-planted into the sand. He lay there, spitting out grit. Coordination, he groaned. I need coordination. For the rest of the month, Izuku didn't lift heavy objects. He practiced multitasking. He would juggle tennis balls with his hands while using his tentacles to stack empty soda cans into pyramids. He would try to write in his notebook with a pen gripped in a tentacle, resulting in illegible scribbles. He learned that his tentacles had handedness. The upper right 3 were his dominant limbs, precise and strong. The lower ones were stronger but clumsier, better for anchoring than manipulating. He also learned about the stairs. People walking along the promenade would stop and point. Look at that kid. Is that a villain Quirk? Gross. It looks like he has worms coming out of his back. Izuku heard them. Every whisper was a grain of salt in a paper cut. He kept his head down, his hoodie pulled up, and focused on the cans. Stack. Collapse. Stack. Collapse. I am not a villain, he told himself, stacking the cans higher. I am an ecosystem. I am adapting. Month 3, the Fibonacci sequence. Autumn brought cooler temperatures, which was a blessing for his hydration levels, but the wind was sharper, drying him out faster. The beach was starting to show patches of sand. Not much, but enough to see progress. Izuku sat on a cleared patch of concrete, holding a nautilus shell he had bought from a souvenir shop. He traced the spiral with his thumb. The golden ratio, he murmured. Phi. 1.618. He had been researching his Quirk's namesake. The nautilus wasn't just a shell, it was a mathematical masterpiece. It grew in a logarithmic spiral, allowing it to grow without changing its shape or center of gravity. It was nature's way of handling pressure. I've been using my tentacles like ropes, he realized. Or like extra arms. I'm punching and pulling in straight lines. He looked at the shell, then at the massive truck tire he had been trying to move for a week. He had tried to drag it, but it dug into the sand. He had tried to lift it, but it was too awkward. Nature doesn't move in straight lines. It spirals. Izuku stood up. He stripped off his shirt. His body had changed in 3 months. Muscles were defining themselves on his arms and chest, but his back was the most drastic change. The spiral markings on his skin were darker, more defined, and the skin around the tentacle ports had thickened into a callus-like armor. He released all 10 tentacles. It was a heavy load, forcing him to widen his stance. He approached the tire. Instead of grabbing it head-on, he arranged his tentacles in a fan pattern. He envisioned the spiral. He struck the tire not with a push, but with a rolling impact, whipping his tentacles in a sequence that followed the Fibonacci curve. Crack whip. The force wasn't absorbed by the rubber. It was redirected. The tire didn't just move, it launched. It spun violently, digging out of the sand and rolling 20 feet away before toppling over. Izuku stared at his appendages. Spiral force. I don't need to be stronger than the object. I just need to apply force along the curve. He spent the next week developing spiral defense. He set up a pitching machine he'd salvaged and repaired, using parts from a broken toaster and a ceiling fan. He loaded it with baseballs found in the trash. He stood 20 feet away. Fire! He shouted, stepping on the pedal. The ball shot out at 60 miles per hour. Instead of catching it or swatting it away, which usually hurt his suckers, Izuku coiled 2 tentacles into a tight spiral shield. When the ball hit, he didn't brace, he rotated the spiral. The ball hit the flesh, slid along the curve of the coil, and was ejected out the side, its kinetic energy completely redirected without hurting Izuku. He laughed. It was the first time he had laughed on this beach. I can parry! I don't have to tank the hit, I can flow with it. He practiced until sunset, deflecting baseballs, then glass bottles, then rocks. He was learning the geometry of his own body. He wasn't a wall, he was a whirlpool. Month 5, the oxygen debt. Winter was brutal. The air was dry as a bone. Izuku's water consumption doubled. His skin was constantly coated in a layer of moisturizing cream and petroleum jelly, making him feel sticky and gross. But it was necessary to prevent the painful fissuring of his dermis. The physical trash was clearing, but Izuku had hit a wall with his mobility. He was slow. He set up a 50-meter dash course on the sand. Ready. Go! He sprinted. His feet dug into the soft sand. His heavy back dragged him down. He crossed the line in 9 seconds. Too slow, he panted, collapsing. In a city fight, I'm a sitting duck. Bakugo can fly with his explosions. Ida has engines. I have wobbly legs. He rolled onto his back, looking at the gray winter sky. He placed a hand on his ribs. Beneath the bone, he felt the secondary organs, the pressure bladders. Jet propulsion, he whispered. Cephalopods take in water and expel it to move. I can do that with air, but air is less dense. It has less thrust. He stood up. If the mass is low, I need to increase the velocity. High pressure output. He walked to the water's edge. He waded in until he was waist deep. Okay. Test 1. He inhaled. Not with his mouth, but with the gill-like vents on his neck and ribs. He felt the bladders expand, compressing the air, squeezing it until his chest felt like a pressurized canister. Release. He fired the air out of the rear-facing vents on his lower back. Pfft. A pathetic puff of air disturbed the water. Izuku didn't move an inch. Harder, he gritted his teeth. Compress it. Like All Might said, clench your buttocks and yell, no, that's one for all. For me, it's about the squeeze. He focused on the muscles around his ribs. He inhaled for 10 seconds, packing the air in, layer upon layer. His chest expanded unnaturally. He felt dizzy from the oxygen hypersaturation. Nautilus jet. Boom. The air exploded from his back vents with the sound of a gunshot. The force slammed his upper body forward. His feet stayed planted in the mud. The result was that Izuku face-planted into the ocean with enough force to skip like a stone. He surfaced, sputtering salt water, a massive bruise forming on his chest. Okay, he wheezed, grinning wildly. That was thrust. He spent the winter mastering the jet siphon. It was dangerous. If he expelled too much air too fast, he hyperventilated. If he took in too much, he risked damaging his internal organs. He had to find the rhythm. Inhale, compress, fire. Inhale, compress, fire. He moved to the sand. He wore roller skates he found in a dumpster, strapped onto his shoes with duct tape, to simulate reduced friction. He would inhale, blast the air behind him, and rocket forward. At first, he crashed constantly. He flew into piles of trash, into the seawall, into the sand. But slowly, he learned to vector the thrust. He learned to use his tentacles as rudders, dragging them behind him to steer or slamming them down to brake. By late February, the locals of Dagoba Beach, mostly stray cats and early morning joggers, were treated to a bizarre sight. A boy in a green tracksuit, sliding across the sand on duct-tape skates, propelled by blasts of air that sounded like rhythmic cannon fire, drifting around piles of garbage with 10 tentacles trailing behind him like the tails of a comet. He called it hydromaneuvering, even though he was on land. It was swimming through the air. Month 8, the abyssal zone. The beach was 70% clear. Izuku was stronger. His shoulders were broad, his legs thick with muscle from the sand running. But the biggest change was his mind. He wasn't analyzing heroes anymore. He was analyzing villains. If I'm a hero, he muttered, hoisting a rusted engine block with 3 tentacles, I need to know how to take down people stronger than me. He was working on a section of the beach that contained industrial waste. Heavy steel beams, concrete pillars. He encountered a massive slab of concrete, part of an old sea wall that had collapsed. It weighed easily a ton. He wrapped all 10 tentacles around it. He braced his legs. He fired his jets to add forward momentum. It didn't move. Power limit, he noted. I can't outmuscle this. He sat on the concrete, drinking water. He watched a crab scurrying over the rocks. It tried to crack a shell, failed, and then found a fissure in the shell and pried it open. Precision over power. Izuku stood up. He looked at the concrete slab. He didn't wrap it this time. He focused on his tentacle tips. He could calcify them, turning the soft flesh into a substance as hard as beak bone. He found a crack in the concrete. He inserted 2 tentacles. Expand. He flexed the muscles inside the crack, expanding the tentacles like a hydraulic jack. Crack. The concrete groaned. More. He inserted 2 more tentacles into another fissure. He leveraged them against each other. The golden ratio again. Finding the weak point, the stress fracture. With a sharp exhale, he ripped his tentacles outward. The 1-ton slab didn't lift. It shattered. It broke into 4 manageable pieces. Izuku smiled, sweat dripping down his nose. I don't need to lift the mountain. I just need to break it into rocks. He spent the next weeks practicing pressure crushing. He would find pipes and crush them flat. He would find lock safes, empty, and pry them open. He turned his grip into a weapon. It was during this time that he met the police officer. It was twilight. Izuku was dragging a bundle of rebar toward the collection truck. Hey! Kid! Izuku froze. I'm in trouble. Illegal quirk usage. A police officer was leaning over the railing of the promenade. He looked tired. You the one leaving these piles for the municipal trucks? The officer asked. Yes, sir. I'm sorry if. Sorry? Kid, the city has been trying to get budget to clean this dump for 10 years. The officer chuckled. You're doing the Lord's work. Just don't hurt yourself, okay? And maybe wear a mask. The rust dust isn't good for your lungs. Izuku blinked. I will. Thank you. You training for UA? Yes, sir. The officer looked at the tentacles writhing nervously behind Izuku's back. He didn't look disgusted. He looked impressed. Good luck. We could use a hero who isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. The officer walked away. Izuku felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with his quirk. We could use a hero who isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He attacked the trash with renewed vigor. Month 10, surface tension. It was the day before the exam. The beach was gone. In its place was a pristine stretch of white sand, turning gold in the sunrise. The waves lapped gently against the shore, no longer breaking over tires and plastic bags. Izuku stood in the center of it all. He was shirtless, wearing only his gym shorts and his modified sneakers. He looked different. The soft, round face of his childhood had sharpened. His jaw was defined. His torso was a map of muscles, scars from scrapes, and the prominent, armored ridges of his quirk. But there was one last thing. The screaming spire. That was what he called it. A tangled, rusted monstrosity of a sculpture formed by the fusion of a truck chassis, several bicycles, and a metal shed, all fused together by years of saltwater corrosion. It sat at the very edge of the water. It was heavy. It was sharp. It was awkward. The final boss, Izuku whispered. He drank his final bottle of water. He felt the fluid rush into his system. His skin felt elastic, hydrated, ready. He walked up to the spire. He released his tentacles. They were thicker now, longer. The spiral markings on his back pulsed with a faint bioluminescent blue light, a sign of peak oxygen saturation. He lashed out. Tentacles 1 through 4 gripped the truck chassis. Tentacles 5 and 6 anchored deep into the sand, digging down to the bedrock. Tentacles 7 through 10 flared out for balance and defense. Grip check. The suction cups adhered with a vacuum seal so tight it dented the metal. Siphon check. He inhaled. The vents on his ribs opened wide, sucking in the cool morning air. He compressed it. Deeper. Harder. Lift. He pulled. The veins in his neck bulged. His legs strained, carving trenches into the sand. The spire groaned. Rust rained down. It shifted, but it didn't lift. It was stuck in the mud. Not enough power! Izuku shouted. He needed momentum. He shifted his stance. He triggered the jet siphon, but he didn't aim backward to push himself. He aimed down. He blasted high-pressure air into the sand around the spire's base. The sand fluidized, turning from solid to liquid. The suction holding the trash in place broke. Now, he engaged the spiral. He twisted his entire body, whipping the tentacles with the torque of a hurricane. With a screech of tearing metal, the spire ripped free from the earth. Izuku didn't just lift it. He spun. 1 rotation. 2 rotations. Building speed, he released. The massive tangle of metal flew through the air, soaring 20 meters before crashing onto the concrete loading dock with a thunderous clang that shook the ground. Silence returned to the beach. Izuku stood there, chest heaving. Steam vented from his gills. His tentacles retracted slowly, sliding back into his skin with a wet, satisfied sound. He looked at the sunrise. Oh my. Goodness! Izuku spun around. All Might was standing on the seawall. He was in his skeletal form, wearing a baggy yellow suit. He was holding a bag of groceries, his jaw practically hitting the floor. All Might! Izuku yelped, grabbing his shirt to cover up. All Might scrambled down the stairs, tripping over his own feet. He stopped in front of Izuku, looking around frantically. Where did it go? All Might gestured to the beach. I haven't been by in a few weeks. I was busy in Kyushu, but where is the trash? I moved it, Izuku said, pointing to the overflowing collection point. All Might looked at the mountain of metal. Then he looked at Izuku. He looked at the boy's arms, the thickness of his neck, the confidence in his posture. Young Midoriya. All Might whispered. I told you to be realistic. I expected you to clear maybe a corner? A pathway? He laughed. It started as a chuckle and turned into a full-blown guffaw, causing him to cough up a little blood. You cleared the whole thing. You cleaned the horizon. I had to, Izuku said, clutching his shirt. I'm not like you, All Might. I don't have one for all. I don't have super strength. I have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So, I decided to work 4 times as hard. All Might stopped laughing. He placed a bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. You didn't just work hard. You evolved. You took a quirk that the world told you was for bottom feeders and you turned it into an apex predator. All Might reached into his grocery bag. He pulled out a water bottle. Here. You look like you need this. Izuku took it. Thanks. You're ready, All Might said, his voice serious. The entrance exam is tomorrow. You've done the physical work. You've mastered your vessel. I think so, Izuku said. But I'm still scared. Without water, without the ocean. Look at this beach, All Might commanded. Is this the ocean? No. Did you conquer it? Yes. Then you don't need the ocean, Izuku Midoriya. You bring the pressure with you. All Might turned to leave, giving a thumbs up. Go show them. Go show Yue that a hero can come from the depths. The night before, Izuku sat in his room. His bags were packed. His costume design sketches were finalized. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. The spiral scars on his back were proud ridges now. He wasn't ashamed of them anymore. He picked up a marker. On his water bottle, he wrote a sequence of numbers. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. The golden ratio, he whispered. Perfection in growth. He wasn't All Might. He wasn't going to punch the sky and change the weather. He was the nautilus. He was the deep pressure. He was the thing that dragged you down and didn't let go until the fight was over. He turned off the light. I'm coming, Yue. Outside, the rain began to fall. A heavy, soaking downpour. Izuku smiled in the dark. Forecast for tomorrow. Heavy rain. Perfect. The morning of the Yue entrance exam, the sky wept. It was a torrential downpour, the kind that turned gutters into rushing rivers and made the neon lights of Muzidifa blur into watercolor smears. For most prospective students, the rain was a curse. It made the pavement slick, the visibility poor, and the commute miserable. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a benediction. He stood outside the massive glass gates of Yue High, his umbrella folded and tucked away in his bag. He let the rain hammer against his skin. Every drop that hit him was absorbed, pulled greedily into his dermis. His secondary organs, the pressure bladders lining his ribs and the moisture reserves along his spine, swelled with potential energy. He felt heavy, not with fatigue, but with power. He felt full. Out of the way, Deku. The voice was low, cutting through the sound of the rain like a jagged knife. Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, holding a black umbrella, his shoulders hunched in irritation. "Good morning, Kaken," Izuku said, his voice steady. Bakugo paused. He didn't turn around, but his grip on the umbrella handle tightened. He had noticed. He had noticed the way Izuku didn't flinch. He had noticed that Izuku's gakuren, usually hanging loose on his skinny frame, was now straining across the shoulders. "Don't think that just because you played Garbage Man for a few months that you're ready for this," Bakugo growled. "The exam isn't a cleanup crew. It's a war zone." "I know," Izuku replied, watching the water drip from his own bangs. "But war zones have tides too," Bakugo scoffed, stepping into the building. "Just don't die. It'd be annoying to have to explain to Auntie Inko why her son is a stain on the pavement." Izuku watched him go, then took a deep breath. The air was rich with humidity. He felt his gills flutter instinctively beneath the collar of his uniform. "Step 1, don't trip." He walked forward, his new, heavier stride carrying him through the gates. The written exam was a test of endurance of a different kind. The air conditioning in the lecture hall was set to Arctic, drying out the air to preserve the electronics and the students' focus. Izuku sat in the middle row, tapping his pencil rhythmically against his chin. Question 44. Calculate the trajectory of a projectile affected by a quirk that reduces gravity by 60% relative to standard atmospheric drag. Izuku smiled. This was just physics. It was the same math he used to calculate the spiral deflection of a baseball against his tentacles. It was the golden ratio. He scribbled the answer, his hand moving in a blur. Around him, other students were groaning, erasing, and panic sweating. Izuku felt a strange sense of calm. The written test was the human test. It was the part of heroism that didn't care about how many limbs you had or if you had slime for blood. It was pure intellect. And in this arena, Izuku had been training for years, dissecting hero fights while the other kids were playing video games. He finished with 10 minutes to spare. He spent the remaining time drinking from his water bottle, feeling the dry air of the AC unit trying to sap his strength, and refusing to let it. "Everybody say hey." President Mick's voice boomed through the auditorium, amplified by his quirk to a level that rattled teeth. Silence answered him. Tough crowd, tough crowd." The voice hero shrugged, adjusting his shades. "All right, examinees. Welcome to my live show. Today, we're gonna bring the house down in a 10-minute mock urban battle." Izuku leaned forward in his seat. Urban battle. His heart sank slightly. He had hoped for a terrain variable, a river, a lake, even a sewer system. But urban usually meant concrete, steel, and asphalt. Dry. Hard. Unforgiving to a quirk that relied on hydraulic pressure and biological grappling. "You'll be conducting these battles in 7 different battle centers." Mike pointed to the screen. "Numbers A through G." Izuku looked at his exam ticket. Battle Center B. He glanced to his right. Bakugo was holding ticket A. "Looks like they split us up," Bakugo muttered, reading Izuku's card. "TCH. They don't want us working together. Or they don't want you killing him," a voice whispered from behind. "Shut up!" Bakugo snapped. "Excuse me." A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A tall boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up, pointing rigidly at the screen. "Sir, the handout clearly indicates 4 types of villains, yet you have only explained 3. If this is a printing error, it is a shameful oversight for a prestigious institution such as UA." The spotlight hit the boy. He turned, pointing a finger directly at the back of Izuku's head. "And you? The one with the curly hair and the hump on his back." Izuku flinched, instinctively hunching to hide the mass of retracted tentacles beneath his jacket. "You've been muttering this entire time. Hydrostatic pressure, structural weakness of alloy. It's distracting. If you're here to murmur, then please leave immediately." The auditorium giggled. The spotlight felt hot on Izuku's neck. The shame was a familiar cold splash, but it didn't drown him like it used to. "He's right. I was venting pressure. Izuku stood up slowly. The giggling stopped. He turned to the boy with glasses. I apologize, Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady. I have a pressurized respiratory system. Muttering helps me regulate my airflow when I'm nervous. I didn't mean to disturb you. He bowed, then sat back down. The boy with glasses blinked, clearly taken aback by the polite, biological explanation. He sat down slowly. I see. My apologies. Okay. President Mike interjected. Thank you for the segue. Examinee 7111. The fourth villain is worth 0 points. Think of it as a hurdle. A gimmick. It's huge, it's scary, and it's a waste of ammo. My advice? Run away. Izuku clenched his fist. That was the one thing he had done his whole life. Not today. Battle Center B was a city. It wasn't a mock-up. It was a full-scale metropolitan district, complete with skyscrapers, paved roads, streetlights, and convenience stores. It was magnificent, and it was terrifying. Izuku stood in the crowd of examinees, wearing his green tracksuit. He had modified it himself. The back was open, secured by magnetic clasps that would release the moment his tentacles expanded. He wore a utility belt loaded with water pouches, concentrated saline solution to keep his electrolytes up. He looked around. The other students looked flashy. There was a boy with a laser belt. A girl with pink skin and horns. A boy who seemed to have engines in his calves. The interruption guy from the auditorium. And there was the girl he had seen at the gate. The one with the brown bob cut. She looked nervous, clutching her chest. I should wish her luck, Izuku thought. It's the hero thing to do. He took a step toward her. A hand chopped the air in front of his face. Stop right there. It was the engine boy. He loomed over Izuku, his height intimidating. That girl is trying to focus, he stated. Are you planning to distract her with your muttering again? Or are you trying to sabotage the competition? Izuku looked at the boy's legs. Engines. High torque. Fast acceleration. He'll dominate the streets. I was just going to say good luck, Izuku said quietly. But you're right. Focus is key. He stepped back, checking his gear. He tapped the pressure valve on his neck. Hiss. A small jet of steam released. Start. The voice of President Mike blasted from unseen speakers. The crowd froze. What are you waiting for? Mike screamed. There are no countdowns in real fights. Go! 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 The mob surged forward. Izuku was pushed. Someone elbowed him in the ribs. He stumbled, his sneakers squeaking on the dry asphalt. I'm slow. While the others were sprinting, using quirks to boost their speed, Izuku was just running. A human run. His heavy back pulled his center of gravity backward. He watched as the engine boy vanished into the city in a blur of exhaust. Damn it! Izuku gritted his teeth. Engage! He didn't stop to unzip. He flexed the muscles in his back. Ryop! The back of his tracksuit tore open. 10 tentacles, thick and muscular, exploded outward. They were a deep, oceanic teal today, flushed with blood and oxygen. He didn't use them to run. He used them to launch. He slammed the lower 4 tentacles into the pavement behind him and pushed. It was like being shot out of a cannon. He vaulted over the heads of the stragglers, sailing 20 feet into the air. He landed on the side of a building, his suckers adhering to the concrete instantly. The ground is crowded, he analyzed, watching the stampede below. The robots will be swarmed. I need the high ground. He began to climb. 3 minutes in, Izuku had 0 points. It wasn't for lack of trying. It was a matter of compatibility. He was perched on a 3rd-story balcony. Below him, a one-pointer, a swift, wheeled drone, sped down the alley. Target acquired. Izuku leaped. He dropped silently, extending 2 tentacles to spear the machine. Zap! A laser beam shot from across the street, blowing the robot's head off right before Izuku could touch it. Merci! Shouted the boy with the naval laser, striking a pose. Izuku landed in a crouch, his tentacles recoiling. Too slow. My attacks are physical. They have travel time. Projectiles are instant. He scrambled back up the wall as a 2-pointer, a scorpion-like tank, rounded the corner. He wound up a punch, reinforcing his arm with a tentacle wrap for added mass. Vroom! The engine boy drifted around the corner, delivering a high-speed kick that shattered the robot's chassis into scrap metal. "Keep up, fellow examinee!" the boy shouted, speeding away. Izuku stood amidst the smoking wreckage. "0, he panted. "I have 0 points. Panic began to rise. It was the same heat he felt when Bakugo yelled at him. The feeling of being small. Of being a fossil. "No. Stop it." He slapped his cheeks. The sound cracked in the alleyway. "Think like a nautilus. I am not a striker. I am a grappler. I am a crusher. I don't need to be faster. I need to be inevitable." He looked up. The city was dense. The streets were kill zones, dominated by speedsters and blasters. But the alleys, the rooftops, the narrow spaces, cephalopods hunt in the reef. They use the terrain. Izuku fired his jet siphon, launching himself upward. He grabbed a fire escape, swung, and vaulted onto a roof. There, a three-pointer. A massive, hulking machine with missile launchers. It was on the roof, scanning for targets below. Most students couldn't reach it. Izuku landed silently behind it. The robot sensed him and turned, its servos whining. Target acquired. It raised a metal arm to smash him. Izuku didn't dodge. Shell formation. 4 tentacles snapped forward, interlocked, and hardened. The robot's arm slammed into the wall of calcified flesh. The impact shuddered through Izuku's bones, but he held. "My turn." The remaining 6 tentacles lashed out. They didn't hit the armor. They snaked around it. They wrapped around the robot's neck, its joints, its weapon barrels. "Constrict." Izuku pulled. He didn't just squeeze. He pulled in opposing directions. He used the leverage of the spiral. Screch snap. The sound of shearing metal was horrific. The robot's head was twisted 360 degrees. The missile launcher was ripped clean off its mounting. Oil, black and viscous, sprayed over Izuku's face. 3 points, he whispered. He didn't stop. He saw another robot on the adjacent roof. He didn't run. He used 2 tentacles to grab a water tower and pulled, slinging himself across the gap like a living pendulum. He crashed into the second robot feet first, his tentacles instantly wrapping it, finding the hydraulic hoses, and crushing them. The machine collapsed, lifeless. 6 points. He was moving now. He entered a flow state. The city wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a jungle gym. He swung from lampposts. He ran along walls. He dropped from above on unsuspecting robots, tearing them apart with the terrifying efficiency of a deep-sea predator dismantling a crab. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have explosions or lasers. He was a silent, writhing storm of limbs. 28 points. He landed on a street corner, crushing a 2-pointer with a tentacle slam that cracked the pavement. He was panting heavily. His skin was starting to itch. The air was dry. He reached for a pouch on his belt, bit the top off, and downed the saline. 45 points, he calculated. Is it enough? I don't know. I need more. The ground shook. It wasn't a vibration. It was a quake. Izuku stumbled, his tentacles flailing to find purchase. What is that? Down the main avenue, the buildings were collapsing. Not metaphorically. They were sliding into the street in clouds of dust, and through the dust it rose, the 0-pointer. It was bigger than the projection. It was bigger than reasonable. It towered over the skyline, a green behemoth of treads and sensors, its very movement displacing enough air to create wind gusts. Gimmick activated, the robot boomed. The voice vibrated in Izuku's chest. The reaction was instant. The examinees broke. Run! It's huge! That's not a gimmick, that's a death sentence. The mob turned and fled. Izuku watched them go. His instinct, his human instinct, screamed at him to follow. Run. Survival. You can't fight a mountain. He took a step back. Ow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling concrete and panic screaming. But Izuku's quirk gave him vibration sensitivity. He felt the cry as much as he heard it. He looked back. In the middle of the street, amidst the rubble of a fallen facade, was the girl with the bob cut. Her leg was trapped under a slab of concrete. The 0-pointer was advancing. Its massive treads were grinding the asphalt to dust. It was maybe 50 meters away. Izuku looked at the fleeing students. Even the engine boy, the one who preached focus and rules, was running. Realistic, All Might had said. Be realistic. Realistically, Izuku should run. He had 45 points. He had passed. If he turned back, he risked death. But then he remembered the beach. He remembered the sludge villain. He remembered the feeling of being the only one who moved. I am not a fossil. Izuku turned. He didn't run. He blasted. Maximum output. He inhaled so sharply it hurt his lungs. He fired every vent on his body backward. He launched himself toward the robot, toward the girl. He landed beside her, sliding on the asphalt. Hey! Are you okay? The girl looked up, tear-streaked and terrified. I can't move. The rock. Izuku looked at the slab. It was heavy. Maybe 2 tons. I got it. He didn't use his hands. He slammed 6 tentacles under the rock. Lift. He heaved. The rock shifted. The girl dragged her leg free, wincing. It's broken. I think it's sprained. The shadow of the 0-pointer fell over them. It raised a fist the size of a bus. It was going to punch the street. Can you run? Izuku asked. I can try. Not fast enough, Izuku realized. He looked up at the robot. He looked at his tentacles. I can't punch it. One for All could punch it. All Might could punch it. I'm just a nautilus. How does a nautilus kill a whale? It doesn't. It drags it down. Hold on to something. Izuku yelled at the girl. What? Izuku turned his back to the robot. He faced the buildings on either side of the street. 2 10-story office complexes. Extension. Limit break. He screamed as he forced his muscles to stretch. It was agonizing. His tentacles were designed for 3 meters, maybe 4. He needed 10. He shot his upper right tentacles toward the building on the right. They smashed through the 2nd-story windows, wrapping around the central support pillar inside. He shot his upper left tentacles toward the building on the left. They punched into the brickwork, anchoring deep. He looked like a grotesque crucifix, suspended between the buildings. Come on, you ugly pile of scrap! Izuku roared. The 0-pointer ignored him. It swung its fist down. Izuku didn't block the fist. He waited for the step. The robot took another step forward. Its massive foot rose and fell. Now! Izuku slammed his remaining 6 tentacles into the ground, anchoring himself to the bedrock of the street. He became a tripwire, a flesh and blood cable spanning the street, anchored to the city itself. The robot's shin hit Izuku's outstretched tentacles. The force was astronomical. Snap. It wasn't the cable that snapped. It was the sound of Izuku's body reaching its limit. He felt his shoulders dislocate. He felt the muscle fibers in his tentacles tearing like wet paper. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore his throat. Hold. He hardened his skin to diamond density. He engaged every newton of force his spiral muscles could generate. He became the immovable object. The 0-pointer was top-heavy. Its momentum was forward. When its leg met the resistance of the Nautilus tripwire, it didn't stop. It hinged. The massive machine stumbled. The giant fist missed the girl by inches, crashing into the street beside her. The shockwave knocked her back, but she was alive. The robot, unbalanced, pitched forward. Its center of gravity shifted past the point of no return. With a groan of stressing metal that sounded like a dying god, the 0-pointer crashed face first into the intersection. The impact was like a meteor strike. Dust billowed up, swallowing everything. Then silence. Time's up. The buzzer sounded. The dust began to settle. The 0-pointer lay still, sparks raining from its exposed wiring. In front of its legs, suspended between the buildings, hung Izuku Midoriya. He wasn't moving. His tentacles were still anchored to the buildings, taut as bowstrings. But they looked wrong. They were bruised purple and black. One was bent at a sickening angle. Blood, dark red mixed with the bluish tint of his oxygenated Quirk blood, dripped from his back onto the pavement. Oh my God! The students began to creep back. Did you see that? He tripped it? Is he dead? Uraraka Ochako crawled toward him. Hey, curly hair! Izuku twitched. With a wet schluck sound, the tentacles detached from the buildings. Izuku fell face first onto the asphalt. He didn't get up. He lay there, staring sideways at the girl. His vision was tunneling. His mouth tasted like copper and salt. Are you okay? He wheezed. Me? Look at you! Uraraka cried, hovering her hands over him, afraid to touch his back. You're bleeding everywhere. Your arms. Izuku tried to retract his tentacles. Pain white-hot and blinding shot up his spine. Ah, nope. Not retracting, he groaned. I think I tore everything. Move aside, dearies. Make way for the kiss of life. An elderly woman in a lab coat hobbled through the crowd. Recovery girl. She took one look at the 0-pointer, then looked at the boy on the ground. She sighed, shaking her head. Reckless. Absolutely reckless. Just like him. Like who? Uraraka asked. Never mind. Recovery girl knelt beside Izuku. This is going to drain your stamina, Sonny. You're already dehydrated. This might knock you out for a week. Did I? Izuku grabbed the hem of her coat with a trembling human hand. Did I pass? Recovery girl looked at his score sheet on her tablet. Then she looked at the wreckage. Don't worry about the score right now, dear. Just worry about keeping those tentacles attached to your spine. She leaned in. Smooch. The healing quirk activated. Izuku's body flooded with warmth. The torn muscles began to knit. The dislocated shoulders popped back in, but the energy cost was too high. Izuku's eyes rolled back in his head. The last thing he saw was the gray sky clearing, a single ray of sunlight hitting the metal carcass of the beast he had brought down. I didn't run, he thought as the darkness took him. I swam. 1 week later, Izuku sat at his dining table. He was staring at a fish dinner. Izuku, honey, please eat, Inko Midoriya pleaded, placing a glass of water next to him. You've lost weight since the exam. I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said, picking at the fish. He wasn't okay. He had failed. He had done the math. He had 45 points. In previous years, the cutoff was usually around 60. He had spent the last minutes of the exam fighting a 0-point villain. A waste of time. A waste of ammo. He had saved the girl, yes. But UA was a hero's school, not a charity. They graded on results. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I wasted all that money on the application fee. I wasted All Might's time. Izuku. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Inko jumped. I'll get it. She ran to the door. Izuku heard a gasp, then the sound of something heavy being dropped. Izuku. It's from UA. She ran back into the room, holding a thick envelope. The wax seal was stamped with the UA crest. Izuku stared at it. It looked like a tombstone. He took it. He walked to his room. He sat at his desk. He tore it open. A small metal disc fell out. Click. A hologram projected onto the wall. I am here as a projection. Izuku fell off his chair. All Might? The hero was wearing a yellow suit that clashed horribly with the background. He coughed, then composed himself. Young Midoriya. It has been a week. I apologize for the radio silence, but I have been busy with paperwork. Lots and lots of paperwork. All Might leaned into the camera. You are looking at your screen with gloom. You think you failed. You think 45 points isn't enough. Izuku nodded, tears welling up. And you would be right. All Might shouted. If this were a villain-crushing contest, 45 points would be borderline. You might have been waitlisted. Izuku's heart shattered. But, All Might slammed his hand on the desk. UA is not just about destruction. How could a hero course reject someone who saves others at the risk of their own life? That would be absurd. The video shifted. A clip played. It was the girl. Uraraka. She was standing in the faculty office, bowing frantically to present Mike. Please! Can I give my points to the plain-looking boy? The one with the tentacles? He saved me. He sacrificed his score to save me. I heard him say he had 45. That's not enough, is it? Please! I have plenty. Izuku covered his mouth. She tried to give me her points? You didn't just display power, Izuku Midoriya. All Might's voice returned, softer now. You displayed the essence of heroism. A quirk is just a tool. It's the spirit that drives it. Rescue points. All Might shouted. A panel of judges watches every exam. And for your act of selfless sacrifice against the zero-pointer, the screen flashed. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 45, rescue points, 60, total, 105, 105 points. All Might roared. The highest score in this year's exam, Izuku sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. His tentacles, reacting to the emotion, slid out of his back and wrapped around himself in a comforting hug. All Might extended a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. Yes, Izuku choked out. Yes, he wiped his eyes. He looked at the hologram, then at the spiral markings on his arm. The ocean was vast, and deep, and scary. But he wasn't drowning anymore. He was just getting started. The first thing Izuku Midoriya noticed when he woke up was the smell of antiseptic and the sound of a humidifier humming aggressively in the corner. The second thing he noticed was that he was thirsty. Not the normal, dry throat thirst of a nap, but a bone-deep, cellular drought that made his skin feel 2 sizes too tight for his body. He sat up, the sheets sliding off his bare chest. His back felt stiff, the heavy ridge of muscle and cartilage along his spine groaning in protest. You're awake. Finally, Recovery Girl spun around in her chair. She looked exhausted, peering at a digital chart. Here. She tossed the plastic bottle at him. Izuku caught it. His reflexes were sluggish, but his tentacles, currently retracted, twitched beneath his skin, sensing the motion. He cracked the seal and drained the liter of water in 4 seconds flat. Slow down, Sonny, or you'll get a cramp, the old nurse chided, though she looked pleased. Your metabolism is a nightmare, you know that? To knit those muscle fibers back together, my Quirk had to drain nearly all your body's moisture reserves. You were looking like a piece of dried kelp when they brought you in. The exam. Izuku rasped, his voice sounding like grinding stones. The results. You passed, she said, waving a hand dismissively. Top of the class, actually. Which is why I didn't expel you from my infirmary immediately. You have potential, Midoriya, but your Quirk is high maintenance. You need to treat your hydration like ammunition. If you run empty you break. Izuku looked at his hands. They were scarred, rougher than they had been a year ago. I know, he whispered. I'm learning. Good. Now get out. School starts on Monday, and I need to sterilize this bed. Monday morning, the Yui uniform was stylish. It was a gray blazer with green accents, sharp and professional. It was also a torture device. Izuku stood in front of his bathroom mirror, struggling. The standard blazer wasn't cut for a boy with a dorsal hump and 10 retracted limbs stored in his back. It pulled tight across his chest, the buttons threatening to become projectiles. The fabric bunched awkwardly around his shoulders, making him look like he was permanently shrugging. I can't wear this, he muttered. Izuku! You're going to be late. His mother called from the kitchen. Coming! He grabbed a pair of scissors. It hurt to do it, defacing a uniform he had dreamed of wearing for years, but he had no choice. He cut a vertical slit down the back of the blazer and the dress shirt. He quickly stitched the edges with a sewing kit he'd become proficient with during his beach cleanup days. Torn clothes were a hazard of the job. He slipped it on. The slit allowed his back to expand naturally. It wasn't perfect, the fabric flapped a bit when he walked, but it allowed him to breathe. He grabbed his yellow backpack, stuffed it with 6 water bottles, and ran out the door. The halls of UA High were massive. The doors were scaled for giants, a subtle reminder that not everyone here fit the standard human mold. Izuku stood before the door marked 1A. The paint was fresh. The barrier was imposing. This is it. The hero course. His heart hammered against his ribs. He could hear the murmur of voices inside. Was Bakugo in there? Was the scary engine boy? Was the nice girl? Don't overthink it. Just open the door. He slid the massive door open. Don't put your feet on the desk. Huh! It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen and the people who made this desk. Shut up, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to? The side of a stick. Izuku froze. The scene before him was exactly what he feared. Katsuki Bakugo was lounging with his feet up on the desk, looking like a delinquent king, while the engine boy from the exam, Tenya Ida, presumably, was scolding him with robotic hand chops. Ida noticed the door open. He spun around. Ah! It's you! The entire class turned to look. Ida marched toward Izuku. He was intense, his glasses glinting. I am Tenya Ida. From semi-private academy. I heard, Izuku stammered, clutching his bag straps. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Midoriya, Ida said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. You realized there was a hidden component to the entrance exam, didn't you? The rescue points. I was so focused on the superficial objective that I missed the true test. I judged you prematurely, Ida bowed stiffly. You were the superior candidate. I hate to admit it, but you bested me. Oh no, I didn't figure it out. Izuku waved his hands frantically. My body moved. I didn't know about the points. Hey! It's the curly-haired boy. A cheerful face popped up behind Ida. It was Ochako Uraraka. She was beaming. You're the one who saved me. The nautilus guy. She mimed, wiggling tentacles with her fingers. That was so cool. Is your back okay? Recovery girl fixed you up, right? Yeah? Izuku felt his face heat up. A girl was talking to him. A nice girl. I'm fine. Just a bit dry. She tilted her head. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. Izuku, Ida, and Uraraka looked down. A man in a yellow sleeping bag was lying in the doorway like a discarded caterpillar. He had messy black hair, bloodshot eyes, and a stubble that spoke of a deep, spiritual exhaustion. He unzipped the bag, stood up, and pulled a juice pouch from his pocket. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, sucking on the pouch. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He tossed the gym uniform at Izuku. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and head to the grounds. The P grounds were expansive, an open field of dirt and track under the blue sky. The air was crisp. Izuku stood in line with the other 19 students. He felt exposed. The gym uniform Yue provided was standard issue. Izuku had to leave the jacket unzipped to accommodate his back, revealing the black compression shirt he wore underneath to hold his hydration packs. A Quirk assessment test? The class chorus rang out. But what about orientation? The ceremony? Uraraka asked. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for leisurely events, Aizawa deadpanned. Yue is known for its unrestricted school traditions. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned his tired gaze on them. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? Without quirks. He pointed at Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Anything goes, as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. He wound up. Die. Boom. An explosion propelled the ball into the stratosphere. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! That's awesome. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be fun. So cool. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop. Fun? He whispered. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be fun? He smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. Right. Let's make this interesting. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with immediate expulsion. The class erupted in panic. Expulsion? It's the first day. Uraraka cried. That's not fair. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa countered. Villain attacks aren't fair. Calibration errors in support gear aren't fair. Heroes are the ones who overturn those unfair situations. If you wanted to hang out at McDonald's after school, you're in the wrong place. Izuku swallowed hard. His throat clicked. Last place gets expelled. He looked around. Bakugo was a powerhouse. Ida was built for speed. The tall girl with the ponytail looked like she could create anything. The guy with the half-white, half-red hair looked bored, radiating confident power. And then there was him. A boy who needed a water break every 20 minutes. I can't be last. I can't go back to being useless. Welcome to the hero course, Aizawa said. Plus Ultra. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and a girl with a frog-like appearance, Tsuyu Ajiri, were up first. Ida was a machine. 3.04 seconds. Ajiri hopped across in 5.58 seconds. Izuku was up against Bakugo. Don't cry when you lose, Deku, Bakugo sneered, stretching his calves. On your marks, the robot camera droned. Izuku ignored him. He turned around. What's he doing? Someone whispered. He's facing the wrong way. Izuku crouched. He inhaled. His chest expanded, the gill slits on his neck flaring open. He focused the pressure into the rear vents located at the base of his spine, the siphon jets. Start! Boom! Bakugo launched forward with explosions behind him. Simultaneously, a sharp, piercing sound of compressed air tore through the track. Nautilus jet! Izuku didn't run. He slid. The sheer force of the air pressure expelled from his back acted like a rocket thruster. He hovered inches off the ground, his shoes skimming the dirt. It was a burst of raw acceleration that snapped his head back. He crossed the line. 4.15 seconds. Bakugo crossed a split second later at 4.13 seconds. Izuku skidded to a halt, digging his heels in, kicking up a cloud of dust. He exhaled a cloud of steam, his face flushed. Close, he panted. Bakugo stared at the time board, his eyes twitching. Since when can you fly? It's not flying, Izuku corrected, reaching for his water pouch. It's hydromaneuvering, but with air. Less friction. Aizawa noted something on his clipboard. Inefficient fuel consumption, but high burst output. Noted. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku held the dynamometer. Next to him, a tall, multi-armed student named Mizo Shoji was gripping his device. His readout beeped, 540 kilograms. Whoa! That's like a gorilla! Mineta squeaked. Izuku looked at the device. His human hand strength was above average due to the beach cleaning, probably around 60 kilograms. But this was a Quirk assessment. Excuse me, Izuku muttered. Squelch. 2 tentacles emerged from his back, snaking over his shoulder. They wrapped around the dynamometer, layering over his human hand. Crush depth. He squeezed. The tentacles didn't just grip, they contracted with the force used to crack open giant clams and deep-sea crabs. The pressure was hydraulic, relentless. Crack. The plastic casing of the dynamometer shattered. The metal spring inside groaned and snapped. The display flickered and died, the last number reading ERR. Ah! I broke it! Izuku panicked, bowing to Aizawa. I'm sorry! I didn't mean to. Shoji looked at his own device, then at Izuku's tentacles. Impressive compression force. Thanks, Izuku squeaked. Your arm duplication is really cool too. We are fellow mutants, Shoji nodded solemnly. We must stick together. Izuku felt a spark of hope. A friend? Test 3, standing long jump. This was easy. Izuku used 4 tentacles to vault himself like a pole vaulter, clearing the sandbox entirely. Test 4, repeated side steps. This was hard. His bulk slowed him down. He tried to use his tentacles to tap the lines, but coordination was tricky at high speeds. He scored average. Test 5, the ball throw. This was the hurdle. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball, threw it, and it just kept going. Infinity? The class shrieked. That's cheating. No, that's physics, Aizawa muttered. Midoriya. You're next. Izuku walked to the circle. His heart was pounding. His throat felt dry again. He'd used a lot of water for the jet dash. He held the ball. I can't throw it with my arm. I need leverage. He remembered the beach. The tire toss. The Fibonacci spiral. He released his tentacles. All 10 of them. They writhed in the air, casting long shadows. Gross, Mineta whispered. Cool, Ajiri croaked. Izuku wrapped 5 tentacles around the ball, creating a basket. He wrapped the other 5 around his torso to brace his core. He began to spin. He mimicked a hammer thrower. 1 rotation. 2. He extended the tentacles holding the ball, increasing the radius. The centrifugal force built up. The air whistled around him. Phi. The golden ratio. Find the curve. He felt the power building. He was about to release. Suddenly, the power vanished. His tentacles went limp. The rigidity left them. They flopped uselessly against his back. The ball slipped from his grasp and rolled a pathetic 5 meters. What? Izuku blinked. My quirk, it's gone. He looked at his skin. The spiral markings were gray, lifeless. He turned to Aizawa. The teacher's hair was floating. His eyes were glowing a piercing red. The scarf around his neck seemed to be alive. I erased it, Aizawa said, his voice dry. Eraserhead? Izuku gasped. The underground hero. Eraser? I don't know him, someone whispered. From what I've seen, Aizawa walked closer, invading Izuku's personal space. You can't control your quirk's resource cost. You used the high-pressure jet for the dash. You crushed the grip machine. You're drying out. Aizawa pointed at Izuku's neck. The gills were fluttering weakly. If you use your full power to throw this ball, you'll dehydrate yourself into shock. You'll be incapacitated. And in a real fight, a dehydrated hero is just a corpse. Izuku stammered. Do you plan to be saved after every attack? Aizawa asked. Or do you have a plan that doesn't involve turning yourself into jerky? Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. I returned your quirk. You have 2 attempts left. Hurry up. Izuku stood there, the weight of the words sinking in. He thinks I'm reckless. He thinks I'm a glass cannon. He picked up the ball. He needed water. He reached for his belt, but stopped. No time. Efficiency. Don't use raw muscle. Use physics. He didn't deploy all 10 tentacles. That wasted moisture. He deployed 3. The strongest 3 from his upper right cluster. He wrapped them tight around the ball, fusing them into a single, calcified club. A nautilus whip. He wound up. He didn't spin his whole body. He snapped his hip, transferring the kinetic energy up his spine. Whip crack. He lashed the tentacles forward. At the very last moment, the point of release, he used a tiny, concentrated burst of air from his wrist vent, a smaller siphon, to accelerate the ball's spin. Spiral shot. The ball screamed. It broke the sound barrier with a sharp crack. It tore through the air, creating a vacuum tunnel, and soared. It kept going. And going. It landed in the distance. Izuku stood there, his arm throbbing. His skin was dry, but not cracking. He hadn't passed out. Aizawa looked at the device. He turned it to show the class. 709.6 meters. Izuku clenched his fist. His tentacles retracted with a hiss. He looked Aizawa in the eye. I can still move, sensei. Aizawa's lips curled into a wide, terrifying grin. Good. The aftermath. The class was silent for a beat. Then chaos. He beat Bakugo's score. Over 700 meters? Without an explosion? That looked painful. Bakugo stood frozen. His brain was short-circuiting. Deku. The pebble. The bottom feeder. The fish. He just threw a ball over 700 meters. He ran a 4-second dash. DKU. Bakugo's palms sparked. He lunged. You bastard! Tell me how you did that. Since when do you have a quirk like that? He was fast. He was going to blast Izuku right in the face. Izuku flinched, raising his arms for a shell defense, but he didn't need to. Wish. A gray cloth ribbon wrapped around Bakugo, pinning his arms to his sides. Gah! What is this cloth? It's stiff. It's a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy, Aizawa muttered, holding the other end of the scarf. Stand down. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. He was lying. Bakugo struggled, glaring at Izuku. He's been quirkless for years. He tricked me. I didn't trick you. Izuku shouted back, stepping out from behind Aizawa. I was a late bloomer. And I trained. I trained on the beach for 10 months. I cleaned the garbage you wouldn't touch. Bakugo stopped struggling. He stared at Izuku. The beach? The place where he mocked him? I'm not the same kid you pushed into the river, Izuku said, his voice shaking but firm. I'm climbing, Kaken. You better watch out. Aizawa released Bakugo. We're wasting time. Next person. Bakugo rubbed his wrists. He didn't attack again. He just stood there, staring at Izuku with a mix of confusion and seething rage. The worldview where he was the protagonist and Izuku was the NPC was cracking. The results. The sun was setting. The students gathered around the holographic display. Okay, here are the results, Aizawa said. By the way, the expulsion thing was a lie. What? The class screamed. It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa said, scratching his neck. That was obvious, said the tall girl with the ponytail, Momo Yaoyorozu. Wait, you guys didn't know? Izuku let out a breath he felt he'd been holding since birth. He slumped, nearly falling over. Oh, thank God, Uraraka sighed. However, Aizawa added, that doesn't mean you're safe. Yui will test you every day. Izuku looked at the board. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 6. Izuku Midoriya. 10. Tenya Ida. 21. Minoru Mineta. He was 6th. He wasn't first. He wasn't All Might. But he was 6th. Midoriya, Aizawa called out as the class started to head back to the changing rooms. Izuku froze. Yes, sir? Aizawa handed him a slip of paper. This is a pass to the support department. Go see a tech named Power Loader. Tell him I sent you. Why? Your uniform. Aizawa gestured to the slit in Izuku's back. It's inefficient. And you need a hydration system better than shoving water bottles in your pants. If you're going to be in my class, you need gear that fits your physiology. Go get measured. Izuku took the paper. He looked at the teacher who had threatened to expel him an hour ago. Thank you, sensei. Don't thank me. Just don't dry out on my floor. Aizawa walked away, dragging his sleeping bag. Izuku walked back toward the locker room. Uraraka and Ida were waiting for him. Midoriya! 6th place. That's amazing. Uraraka cheered. Indeed, Ida nodded, chopping the air. Your utilization of centrifugal force was highly calculated. I must redouble my efforts. Thanks, guys, Izuku smiled. He felt the cool evening breeze on his face. His back ached. His skin was itchy. He was exhausted, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't walking behind them. He was walking with them. Hey! A rasping voice came from behind. Izuku turned. Tsuyu Ajiri was standing there, her finger on her chin. I'm Tsuyu Ajiri. Call me Tsuyu. Oh, okay, Tsuyu. You're Quirk, she said bluntly. It's like an octopus, but with a shell, Karo. Yeah. It's nautilus. I like it, she said. We're both aquatic. Maybe we should train together sometime. The pool is open on weekends. Izuku's eyes widened. Really? That would be amazing. I'm so much faster in the water. Good, she smiled. See you tomorrow, Midoriya-chan. She hopped away. Izuku turned back to Uraraka and Ida. He clutched the straps of his backpack. Coming, Deku? Uraraka asked. Yeah, Izuku said, trying out the name. It didn't sound like useless when she said it. I'm coming. He walked toward the sunset, his shadow stretching long and strange behind him. A boy with a shell, learning to walk on land.